Uh, with me today is Pepito Macian, who's a student at Brown University, and he's going to be telling us a little bit about how he learned vocabulary in second language. And as a student, Pepito, what are some of the ways of learning vocabulary that have worked for you, or that reflect what you did to learn new foreign language words?
Okay, well, I've gone about learning vocabulary in two different ways, distinct ways. One is learning vocabulary for my exams, and so I can pass my chapter and unit exams, and the second is learning vocabulary to become more fluent in the language that I'm learning. When I go about learning vocabulary for exams, I guess it's a fairly traditional, maybe outdated form of learning vocabulary, but I get the vocab that I need to learn for said chapter or exam. I write out the word in English, or English on one sheet, and then another sheet I write it out in whatever language the vocab is in, and then I translate it that way from the foreign language to English, and then English to the foreign language. When going about learning languages to become more fluent, I try to almost immerse myself in the language. So I try to set off an hour every day to listen to music, read the newspaper if it's a language that I have a certain fluency in, watch the news. The internet is a wonderful source for, I guess, realia. Watching just an hour every day, immersing myself in the language. Words that I don't know, I look up in the dictionary, or I go to a native speaker and I say, hey, what does this phrase mean? What does this word mean? And so the next time when it comes around, next time I listen to a song, next time I'm watching the news, I know what it means.
Which method helps you retain the words longer?
I would say
the
latter, the immersion or immersing myself into that language. For instance, yesterday I was listening to a German opera, and there were phrases and whatnot that I had remember asking someone about, or looking up in the dictionary, and I remembered what those words meant and what the phrases meant in the context of the language being spoken, so that even the words that I had learned in the vocabulary, if I couldn't necessarily remember to recollect the word, if you were asking a word in English, what is the word in French, German, I wouldn't remember, but I was able to remember the word and what it meant while listening to it in context.
So the song or the context, provided a mental prod, so to speak, or a hook to bring back that information, help you retrieve it.
Exactly.
Talk to me about what kinds of strategies your teachers might have used in class that you found particularly helpful.
Let me think.
If you can remember.
I'm trying to remember. Well, I remember always, I guess I'm a very auditory learner, so I always remembered it was helpful when the speaking, when the professor or the teacher would speak, and then maybe I'm more of an auditory visual learner. They'd write it out on the board, and just this repetition of repeating the word, repeating the phrases, and question answer really helped me remember the
Did they use any visuals at all?
Like handouts, slides,
pictures,
and whatnot. But I particularly remember vocabulary more when it's used in context, when it's used in speaking, when it's used in sentences, than I do just random words.
I understand that. Thinking about that and thinking about context and how you learn, you mentioned that you use the internet a lot, and so what about the context of the internet helps you remember these words or the language?
Watching and listening and reading the language in a context and for instance, reading the newspaper. So you go to the newspaper of a foreign country, and you go to the international section, and you know the news, what it may be about the war in Iraq or about immigration, and so you have the context of what you're reading. So then it almost acts as a guide when you're reading or listening or watching the news, so that you're like, oh, okay, I understand what this is about. So then you can pick up key phrases, key ideas. And they're always, I mean, in the news they have pictures and they have video along with what they're saying.
So let me see if I can recapitulate what I understood you to have said. You said that when you have to cram, that you do what everybody does, which is sit down and learn the English and Spanish side by side,
Exactly.
or English and German, or whatever it happens to be. But when you want to learn it for long-term memory and for long-term usage and for fluency, that you really like to learn language in context. In fact, you actually work at it, trying to find avenues where language is presented in context, so that you can not only read it, but also experience it, either actively through listening or some sort of usage. Is that correct?
Yes, I love to interact with native speakers as much as possible, and I wish there were more native speakers of foreign languages around that I could speak and practice my language with.
So thinking about that and thinking about what really works best for you, what would be your one piece of advice to teachers when they're teaching you language?
Teaching vocabulary and whatever the subject matter is in context of creating dialogue, making the language alive, I guess, making sure that it's a living, breathing entity, because that's what language is.
Well, thanks for being with us today, Pepito, and I wish you great luck this fall at Brown and in your future studies.
Thank you very much.